Today we are ranking every running back in the 2025 draft class. I've got 31 running backs graded, and this is a really good class. One of my favorite positions to scout this year. I don't think the top of the class is as good as 2023, where you had Bijan and Jameer both go in the top 12. But the thing that really makes this class stand out is the depth and how many day 2, early day 3 options there are. I have 10 running backs with 3rd round grades or better, and even a lot of the 4th round grades I think could become quality starters. The way that I do my grades, I do factor in positional value, so the overall grades for running backs are going to be a little bit lower, especially when you're talking top 100 type of guys. But this is a stacked class, and I'm excited to get into it. For every player I talk about, I'm going to have 3 graphics. There will be a scouting report, their athletic testing and measurables, and then skill ratings. If you want to look at these for pretty much every player in the draft class, you can find them on my draft board, which I'll link in the description. And for each position, I'm going to start out the video by going through what the skill ratings actually mean. Number 1, to define them, but also just to lead off by talking about what skills and traits are most important for that position. So all the athleticism ratings are pretty self-explanatory: speed, acceleration, deceleration, change of direction. Size is a combination of size and play strength. In the tackle avoidance section, we've got backfield, which is your ability to avoid traffic in the backfield. So you take the handoff, you've got a defensive tackle or a linebacker right in your face. How often are you making that guy miss? Open field is your ability to make defenders miss in the open field, whether it's with a juke, a spin, a hurdle, whatever it is, the more the better. I've also got contact balance and power. A lot of times those 2 ratings correlate, but they're not necessarily tied together. I would say that contact balance is your ability to absorb contact. Power is your ability to deliver contact. So for contact balance, that's just staying upright when you get hit. It also includes, like, you're going through an open gap, a defensive tackle sticks his arm out. Are you getting pulled down by that arm tackle, or are you going to brush it off? And then power is like lowering your shoulder, trucking a defender, moving a pile, goal line situations, that sort of thing. And then jump cut is how explosive your jump cut is and how much ground you cover with that one cut. For 3rd down skills, we've got route running, catching, and pass blocking. I will say with pass blocking, you can kind of break that down into 3 categories. I think pass blocking for a running back comes down to effort, physical traits, and technique. Effort is the one that's non-negotiable. Like, if you're not willing to square up with a linebacker in the hole, then you just can't be on the field in 3rd down situations. Physical traits is mainly like size and length. At a certain point, that is a non-negotiable, but you can be 210 pounds and still be a really good pass blocker. And then technique would be like hand placement, footwork, also awareness and being able to read a blitz. That's something where it's ideal if you have it, but if you check the first 2 boxes and your technique is a little bit sloppy, so you have some losses, I might end up giving that player a higher pass blocking grade than you would expect, because ultimately it's about projecting to the NFL. So I think with some NFL coaching, it's easier to fix that than it is some other things. The miscellaneous category is basically like vision plus fumbling. So fumbling is self-explanatory. Vision is kind of overall, do you hit the open gap? Patience is a running back's understanding of the tempo of the run and how to set up blocks. The most patient running backs might not actually have the highest rating here because you can be too patient. Creativity is essentially your ability to see rushing lanes outside of what's clearly blocked for you. And then gap and zone refer to your vision and patience within certain rushing schemes. Gap is mostly just power and counter. With zone, I'm specifically referring to outside or wide zone. All right, so like I said, 31 running backs graded. I wrote scouting reports for 26 of them, so you'll start to see those pop up once we get higher up the rankings. Since there are so many guys to talk about, I'm going to be a little bit more brief on the day 3 guys than I was on the quarterback episode. But my RB31 is Marcus Yarns out of Delaware. This is a guy that got a Senior Bowl invite, got invited to the Combine. When I saw his Senior Bowl invite posted, I remember I watched his tape like immediately when I saw that. Just because I'm always interested to see if there's an under-the-radar small school guy. And I came away from his tape pretty surprised that he got invited to the Senior Bowl. Bowl invites and combine invites, those are basically a reflection of how the NFL views players because teams submit who they want to go to those events. And when I watch Marcus Yarns, I just have a hard time envisioning a path to him being on an NFL roster. He's 5'11", 192 pounds, so severely undersized. He really has no ability to play through contact or work between the tackles. He goes down pretty much immediately when he's touched. What he brings to the table is that he's a pretty good receiving back, but he isn't elite or dynamic enough to offset his inability to do traditional running back things. I didn't think he was a particularly special route runner. He's got solid hands, but I mean, this is not a guy that I would draft or really prioritize that much in undrafted free agency. Somebody that you cannot keep in pass pro. I mean, he was getting annihilated by, I think it was Villanova's linebackers. Like, they were just knocking him back. I don't think he's going to be able to stand up to an NFL blitzer. RB30, I've got Donovan Edwards out of Michigan. Quite a fall from grace for Donovan Edwards. I mean, this is someone who I feel like at one point was projected to be a day 2-ish pick. Was on the cover of NCAA 25 somehow. He has decent size and he's a good straight line athlete, but this dude runs like he's wearing a blindfold. I mean, his vision, I think, is the worst in this class, constantly running into blocks. It's like he has no idea what the blocking scheme is designed to do. His only big plays in 2024 came when the sea parted and basically anybody that runs a 4.5 or better could have gotten 30 yards from how it was blocked. Has decent power at the point of contact, but doesn't really evade tackles or anything. I mean, he had 17 forced missed tackles in 2024, which is on a per carry basis, I'm sure one of the worst in this class, and 7 of those came in week 3 against Arkansas State. I don't really see him getting drafted or what the upside is outside of the fact that he's pretty fast. My 29th ranked running back is Phil Mafah out of Clemson, and I was pretty disappointed in his tape. There are some people that have him as kind of a fringe top 100 player. I see him as a barely draftable running back. His size is awesome. I mean, 6'1", 234 pounds. That's built in a lab physical profile. And he has a really good top speed. When he has an open runway to build up speed, he rarely gets caught from behind, but he needs an open runway to reach that speed. There's not really any burst through the line of scrimmage. He can truck linebackers when he has speed built up, but he's not elusive. Very stiff, changing directions, can't shake defenders in open space. I think he could be a solid goal line back, but I don't see a whole lot outside of that. My RB28 is Montrell Johnson Jr. out of Florida. He is like above average to average in almost everything. I mean, looking at the player ratings, I think he probably has more ratings between 40 and 65 than anyone else in this class. He's a solid athlete, decent size, has pretty good contact balance, not super elusive, but he can juke defenders occasionally. I didn't think Montrell Johnson had great vision. I didn't think he was that creative. Could end up being like a rotational early down back. Next up, we've got another Michigan running back, Kalel Mullings. So when I watch these players, I pull up a playlist on True Media that has all of their pass blocking snaps, all of their carries, and all of their targets in the passing game. And it usually loads them in reverse order chronologically. So like it starts at week 14. And I got through the first 5 or 6 games with Kalel Mullings and just had no idea why he had any draft hype, because his second half of the season was terrible. I think he averaged like 3.6 yards per carry over the second half of the year. Once I got to like week 5, week 4, Minnesota and USC were really good games. Then I started to understand it a little bit more, but his draft stock is basically dependent on 2 or 3 performances. Similar to Phil Mafah, he's another power back with really good build-up speed, but not very good acceleration. What set Mullings apart to me is that he's a lot shiftier in open space. He can actually make a defender miss at the second level. He doesn't have a lot of experience, only 49 carries before 2024. So there is probably some upside there, but I don't see more than like an early down, short yardage type of back. My 26th ranked running back is Lan Larison out of UC Davis. And this is one of my favorite players in the entire class, but I haven't heard anybody talk about him. Like, I consume a lot of draft media and podcasts, haven't heard one person say a single word about this guy. He's like the Pablo Sanchez of the FCS. Last year, he led all college running backs across any division in rushing yards per game. This year, he led all running backs in receiving yards, 853. The next highest was 671. He's a shutdown pass blocker, didn't allow a single pressure this year on 59 pass blocking snaps. He can return kicks. He takes snaps at Wildcat quarterback. He was pretty much UC Davis's entire offense. You obviously have to adjust for level of competition, but you could make a case that Land Larison is the best receiving back in this class. I mean, such a well-rounded skill set. He's got reliable hands. He can be that stabilizing third down back that you feed checkdowns, but he's also a dynamic weapon down the field. He can run the wide receiver route tree. He'll separate from defensive backs on deep corner routes. He can run slot fades, wheel routes from the backfield. He can track the ball over his shoulder, high point the ball, make contested catches. He's a patient inside runner. He can hit home runs when he breaks runs outside. He has solid contact balance. He can stiff arm, hurdle defenders, lethal jump cut to shake the last line of defense. Based on how little hype he's getting, I assume he's going to go undrafted, but man, if he was available, I would spend a day 3 pick on this dude. At 25, I've got Raheem Sanders out of South Carolina. Good size, had a really impressive combine, ran a 4.46 at 6 foot, 217 pounds. I think he's a really smart and balanced running back. I just didn't think that his combine testing really showed on tape. He does a great job of recognizing changing defensive pictures, so gap exchanges, slants, stuff like that. He can adjust his plan quickly on the fly. He evades a lot of tackles, but it's hardly ever a result of explosiveness or suddenness. He just has a great sense for reckless pursuit angles and how to exploit that. So he'll recognize the defender taking a steep pursuit angle from the corner of his eye and just kind of subtly slow down or adjust directions and make them miss. When he's got a defender squared up with him in the hole, breakdown form tackle, he just isn't explosive enough to get away from them. I think because he's such a smart player and processes the game so quickly, he can find a role as a rotational early down back, but probably not athletic or dynamic enough to be a full-time starter. At 24, I've got Jarquez Hunter out of Auburn, one of the most entertaining players to watch in this class. Pretty much carried Auburn's offense and was very productive behind below average blocking. He's one of a handful of players in this running back class that's technically below average from a size and physical makeup perspective, 5'9", 204 pounds, but he plays through contact like a 230-pound back. You'd be hard-pressed to find a running back of his size who trucks defenders as often as Jarquez Hunter, and then to kind of play off of that, because he's such a battering ram in the open field, defenders will try to really lower their pads to meet his power, and he has a deadly hurdle to counter them playing with reckless pad level. He has good breakaway speed, and he's a really effective zone runner, natural feel for how to set up blocks at the second level, give his linemen time to climb to linebackers. His biggest weakness is lateral athleticism and change of direction ability. A lot of times, even if he's not making an abrupt, sharp cut, you'll see him lose his footing when he's just trying to gradually turn and round the corner. He doesn't have the ability in the open field to stack multiple moves together. He can juke somebody occasionally, but it costs him his balance and he ends up losing his footing. Wasn't used very much as a receiver and didn't seem to have natural hands on limited targets. And then in pass protection, he's willing, but doesn't have great technique. And that's where you see his size deficiencies really come into play. My running back 23 is RJ Harvey out of UCF. This is somebody that a lot of people really seem to like. Very productive, almost 3,000 rushing yards over the last 2 seasons. I just felt like so much of his production was not translatable to the NFL, and he didn't do a lot of the little things that kind of translate to the next level. So like I said, incredibly productive, 32 15-plus yard runs in 2024, which is the second most in the FBS. He's very athletic. He's got breakaway speed, incredibly explosive. Definitely undersized, but runs a lot bigger than his listed weight. My issue with RJ Harvey is I just don't think he has the vision working between the tackles that you need to succeed in the NFL. He's so bounce happy, really only comfortable attacking open space. He had some explosive runs between the tackles, but those were only when the blocking was essentially perfect and he could just sprint through the A-gap untouched. I don't really think he has the spatial awareness, the nuance to set up blocks, the internal clock to execute inside runs at a high level. And then his pass blocking tape was brutal. I mean, he's a complete liability in pass pro. You can't have him on the field in third down unless he's going out on a route, and in that case, his hands aren't that reliable. He could end up going to an offense with really good blocking and end up being pretty productive. I just didn't think the vision was there for me to give him a higher grade than mid day 3. At 22, I've got Jordan James out of Oregon, 5'9.5", 205 pounds. Didn't test great, but I think he's an average to above average straight line athlete. He's a really interesting prospect because there's a lot of people whose opinions I really respect that are high on Jordan James. I know Dane Brugler has him in his top 100, I think. And I know Mike Renner really likes him. And I absolutely see the appeal with Jordan James. He's a player that I've definitely gone back and forth on. I want to start though by giving you 2 stats that I think are a really good summation of what you see when you watch Jordan James tape. So he was hit at or behind the line of scrimmage on just 28.3% of his rushing attempts in 2024, which was the 6th lowest rate in the FBS. And he led the FBS with 58 rushing attempts where he wasn't contacted until at least 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. So he's taking the handoff, he's running at least 5 yards downfield until a defender makes contact with him. And that's really a lot of what you see when you watch his film. He's running outside zone, he just sprints through a wide open front side B gap. Nobody touches him until he's 7 or 8 yards downfield. He barrels into a second level defender, gets a couple extra yards through contact, and it's a nice 9 to 10 yard carry. But in the NFL, rarely are you going to have that open of a rushing lane. So on the one hand, a lot of his production is kind of not that translatable, but on the other hand, I can't blame him too much for just taking what's blocked for him. I do think he's the definition of a no-nonsense runner. There is so little production that was left on the field because of him trying to do too much or dancing behind the line of scrimmage. He just kind of takes the handoff, sprints through an open gap, doesn't create that much on his own, but he gets what's available, especially when they run outside zone. The one thing that I did really like about Jordan James is his ability on gap scheme runs where he's having to run through tight quarters. I thought he was really efficient reading his blocks, setting up his lead blockers, getting skinny through the hole. Perfect combination of being patient while he sets his blocks up, but then decisive when the lane clears open. So yeah, on early downs, I think he's just a capable starting caliber running back, but I don't think he gives you much in the passing game. His hands were pretty bad, not a great pass blocker. For an undersized running back, I would want someone that gives you more on third down, ideally. And even though his testing wasn't great, 14th percentile 10-yard split, 48th percentile 40-yard dash, some of the next-gen stats tracking numbers were actually pretty impressive and I think speak more to what he shows on tape. So looking at his tracking numbers, on the off-tackle recognition drill, he had a 100th percentile max speed compared to running backs over the last 3 years. And then also 92nd percentile max speed in the blast read drill. At RB21, I've got Taj Brooks out of Texas Tech, dense muscular build. At the combine, measured in at 5'9", 214 pounds, but he was listed at 230 on Texas Tech's website. A lot of times schools will exaggerate their height, but they don't necessarily do that as often with weight. So when you see a big disparity there, it's normally just that player dropped weight to run a better 40 time. So ultimately, I view Taj Brooks as, a 225 pound running back as far as what he's going to play at. But he had a 96th percentile short shuttle, which is one of the more important drills for running backs, and that absolutely shows up on tape. His foot quickness to make horizontal cuts behind the line of scrimmage and at the second level is incredible. I mean, he is such a jittery runner. He didn't have great blocking at Texas Tech, but he's a player where his 3 and 4 yard runs are equally as impressive as his big plays because it's just him making something out of nothing. I think with his change of direction ability, his patience, and his peripheral vision, he's a perfect fit for a gap scheme. You add on that he's got good contact balance and power. This is someone that I think could get drafted on day 3, but end up as a starter because the running back coach and offensive coaches just like the fact that he's going to get them 3 or 4 yards at a minimum every play. Doesn't have great burst into the second or third level. His top speed, I think, is average. I thought that his 2023 tape was a lot better than his 2024 tape. There were a lot more big plays, and he broke tackles a lot more often. But early down running back for a gap scheme, I really like Taj Brooks. At 20, I've got Woody Marks out of USC. One of the closest comparisons in this class is Woody Marks to Duke Johnson Jr. 5'10", 207 pounds. This is another pure third down back. He's one of the most productive running backs in the passing game in this class, 257 career receptions. He's a player that can run routes, catches the ball consistently, 4.5% career drop rate. Anything below 5% is great. He's just a plug-and-play third down back. I was really impressed with some of the cuts that he was able to make in the open field to shake defenders at the second level, but that elusiveness didn't show up as consistently as you'd like to see. He also just has no contact balance or power to churn out tough yardage. His vision as an inside runner is actually really good. He's very creative to reroute when his initial lane gets filled up. He has the jump cut ability to slash against the flow of the defense suddenly. Does a great job of steering linebackers into lead blockers to create favorable rushing lanes. Runs tight off the hip of his lead blocker. As far as his vision and processing, he has everything you want to be an early down running back. I just think the inability to play through contact is going to be such a limiting factor for him. When you watch these guys actually run, I mean, it's incredible that Woody Marks weighs more than guys like RJ Harvey, Jarquez Hunter, some other guys that we're going to talk about higher up the list. He just doesn't bring enough contact balance or physicality to the table, in my opinion. At 19, I've got Kyle Monangai out of Rutgers, one of the most consistent what you see is what you get types of players in this class. In 2023, he had 1,263 rushing yards. In 2024, he had 1,279 rushing yards, 706 career touches, and he has never fumbled the ball, so he's going to have that 99 ball security rating. He's just not a very good athlete, and if anything, that's going to be what limits him in the NFL. I do really like his change of direction and jump cut ability. He can make sharp cuts on a moment's notice. He's got quick feet, sudden lateral burst. You especially see that in the backfield. Really good at evading traffic and unblocked defenders early in the run. And his best fit is going to be for an outside zone scheme. Great feel for tempo and pacing to set up cutback lanes. Does a good job pressing the line to influence defenders towards the front side, and then he can make a quick sudden jump cut to veer against the flow of the run. Another running back that doesn't have great size but runs really big, 5'8", 211. That is a decent build for a running back, a nice compact build, but he runs low to the ground, finishes with violence, really effective on short yardage runs. Over the last 2 years, he's converted 40 out of 45 third or fourth down and 2 or less rushing attempts. So just a solid early down zone running back that also brings some nice power. He's a tenacious pass blocker. He had one of the best pass pro reps in this class, actually from 2023 against Michigan. He still has a fair amount of losses though. You see the lack of size and length kind of show up, and he'll lose the edge in pass pro occasionally. At RB 18, we've got Ollie Gordon out of Oklahoma State, one of the biggest fallers from the summer. If you looked at any running back rankings list from before the season, he was pretty much guaranteed to be in the top 3 at least, but his production just fell off a cliff in 2024. Last year, he had 31 15-plus yard runs. This year, he only had 8. And part of that is that he got worse blocking, I think, but he also didn't look quite as athletic, didn't break as many tackles, didn't do as much to elevate his surroundings. And ultimately, I think that kind of speaks to the type of running back that Ollie Gordon is, and really just players of his archetype. The danger with taking running backs early who aren't great athletes, and we've got a few more of them coming up, is it can look really good if they get really good blocking, but if the blocking declines, a lot of times their production will go along with it. So Gordon has an imposing frame, over 6'1", 226 pounds, 96th percentile arm length. Only ran a 4.61, but I actually thought his breakaway speed was adequate on tape. When he was able to hit the open field, he actually didn't lose a lot of foot races. He has good power and balance through contact, weaponizes his length. He's got a really effective stiff arm, light feet when he's accelerating through a crease to avoid ankle tackles, and then also has a nice hurdle in the open field. But he isn't a twitchy or sudden athlete, can't make sharp cuts in the open field, so that kind of limits his elusiveness. I think he can give you solid production if he gets good blocking, but he's just very dependent on his blockers to kind of get the ball rolling. Now, surprisingly for Ollie Gordon, based on his archetype, I actually really like him as a third down back. 0 drops on 38 targets in 2024. He's an example of what I was talking about at the beginning with Pass Pro, where I have a really high pass blocking rating for him, 87, even though the tape isn't perfectly clean. He plays with an edge, has absolutely no fear of contact, and he has like the perfect built-in-a-lab physical tools for pass pro. Size, length, he can anchor, he can reach defenders outside of his frame. Anytime that he stays on his feet and just squares up with a blitzer, like the results are overwhelmingly positive. What's frustrating about Ollie Gordon, and you see this with some other players in this class, is sometimes he pass blocks like he weighs 200 pounds. There are way too many cut blocks on his tape, and like usually it works out, but dude, he's big enough and physical enough that there is no reason he should ever be lunging or leaving his feet in pass pro. He can just like physically match the players he's going up against. He doesn't need to be taking these shortcuts. And so most of his losses come from just failed cut block attempts that are completely avoidable. My 17th ranked running back is another third down specialist, Brashard Smith out of SMU. He's a transfer from Miami, converted receiver. This was his first year playing running back, and he had really good production. I think he was SMU's best offensive player, probably best player overall. So he can run an advanced route tree. He can track deep targets over his shoulder down the sideline. He has incredibly reliable hands. Didn't drop a pass until the conference championship game against Clemson. He had 2 focus drops, but overall, like, I trust his hands as much as any running back in this class. As a runner, I was really impressed with his elusiveness and then his vision for somebody that's so new to the position. I think he's one of the most elusive running backs in this class, and I actually have him with the highest deceleration rating in this class. He has a lethal spin move. He can stop on a dime, dead leg, send defenders flying off the screen. He stays clean in the backfield. He can hit the jets instantly, good breakaway speed. From an athleticism standpoint, he's pretty much a B+ to A- in every category, but then really surprising poise and anticipation running between the tackles. He can anticipate threats before they really materialize and get within his field of vision. He's able to multitask and shake tacklers in a phone booth, but keep an eye out for an exit lane in his peripheral. Very creative and composed runner with just a natural sense for working in crowded rushing lanes. As you would expect for somebody that's 194 pounds, he doesn't have very good contact balance or power, can't drive his legs and, grind through a stalemate at the goal line or first down marker. I don't think this is a guy that you just give a bunch of handoffs on 1st and 10, but I think he can be a really dynamic weapon in the passing game. I see him similarly to Nyheim Hines. My 16th ranked running back is DJ Giddens out of Kansas State. This is the second player after RJ Harvey that I think I'm probably lower on relative to consensus. He is just over 6 foot, 212 pounds, had some really impressive combine testing, a 97th percentile 10-yard split, 95th percentile broad jump. I think on tape, what's actually his most dominant athletic trait though is his jump cut and his lateral quickness. I gave him the highest jump cut rating in this class, just an incredible ability to make a sharp cut and gain so much leverage laterally on a defender, whether it's at the second level or cutting back against the grain on outside zone. DJ Giddens had some absolutely dominant performances in 2024, and I definitely see how watching a couple games, you could come away with a really high grade on him. The Oklahoma State and Colorado games, weeks 5 and 7, were 2 of the better performances in this class. I think in matchups where he wasn't being tackled by Shiloh Sanders, his tape was a lot less impressive. He had 12 force missed tackles just in the Colorado game. And ultimately, what makes me lower on DJ Giddens is really 3 things: his vision, his power, and his third down ability. So I think once he clears the line of scrimmage, DJ Giddens' vision is top notch. Like, he has a really good sense, kind of like what I was talking about with Brashard Smith, for tacklers that are pursuing him from his peripheral vision. He can kind of identify unorthodox cutback lanes 4 to 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. But behind the line, he is the perfect example of being patient to a fault. there are way too many runs where he never even accelerates to like 30% of his top speed. Too many plays where he just never makes an attempt to get north and south. You see this elite explosive testing with the 10-yard split, the vertical jump, the broad jump, all above 90th percentile. That so rarely actually plays out on his tape because he's never decisive enough hitting the hole. When his blocking doesn't reveal a clearly accessible path, it's kind of just an aimless drifting rushing style where he's bouncing into his blockers and never really turning on the jets and getting downfield. He has a high cut upright build. He's taller than he is thick, and I think he's a very upright runner. He doesn't play through contact very effectively. A lot of plays where he gets stood up on 3rd and short or at the goal line. I haven't read any scouting reports for him, but I would guess if you look up a DJ Giddens scouting report in the strength, it's going to talk about his size and how he's a big running back, but I don't think he plays very big, and I actually think his size is not that ideal. Like, I would rather him be shorter. I would rather him be 5'8", 212 than 6 foot 212. And then the third thing is that I think he's purely an early down running back. He has really bad focus at the catch point, a lot of drops. His drop rate in 2024 was 20%, and he had a few knockout blows, but very erratic pass blocking tape. He's kind of just hunting for the kill shot, and a lot of times he'll lunge into contact and whiff on his assignment. My 15th ranked running back is Devin Neal out of Kansas. He's kind of the epitome of like does everything at a decently high level, just not a very good athlete. And so that kind of limits what I see his ceiling as in the NFL. He has really good vision. He's a quick processor, executes outside zone exactly like it's drawn up, presses the line, identifies the cutback lane, sharp jump cut. He has good size and contact balance, really quick feet to escape backfield penetration. Fumble rate is incredibly low for his entire career. And then probably his most dominant trait is his elusiveness in the open field. He has some absolutely disrespectful jukes where he's just snatching defenders' ankles, but he doesn't have the burst to consistently clear open rushing lanes. There's a lot of times where he's got a wide open gap. He tries to hit the hole, but a defensive tackle is able to disengage and slide over to the lane quickly enough and bring him down. Outside of that, I just don't have a whole lot of negative things to say about Devin Neal. I think he's a quality starting caliber running back. And then at RB14, we've got pretty much the exact same mold of player, but I think just a slightly better version, and that's going to be Corey Kiner out of Cincinnati. He was one of the last guys in this class that I watched. I'm kind of like just working through the list of players that are projected to go on day 3, giving out a lot of 6th, 7th round grades. I was shocked with how much I liked Corey Kiner's tape, and he's not my highest graded running back, obviously, but he's one of my favorite players in this entire class. Corey Kiner just plays running back at a professional level. He's the kind of player that I think running back coaches are going to be like bugging their GM to draft on day 3 because he just does all the little things at such a high level. He has a complete, well-rounded skill set, very few weaknesses as a runner, and fits any offensive scheme. So he forced 82 missed tackles in 2024, which is the 4th most in the FBS. I said in his scouting report, he has the entire skill tree unlocked when it comes to breaking or avoiding tackles. So at 5'8.5", 208 pounds, he has absurd power and contact balance. There is no way that a player of his size should be able to lower his shoulder and steamroll linebackers in the open field the way that he does. But then he can also spin, stiff arm, hurdle, juke defenders in the open field. When you're watching tape on him as a defensive player, there's no tendency that you can key in on as like, this is how you've got to tackle him to bring him down, because he's got everything in his bag to counter that. He has outstanding vision as a zone or gap runner. When he's running outside zone, he hits cutback lanes like a machine. He can run power and counter and stay tight to his lead blockers, get skinny through a narrow crease. Does a great job on duo of luring linebackers into the trash and then an explosive jump cut to hit the edge. Corey Kiner's the type of player where if he was just an above average athlete, I think he'd be a 2nd round pick, because from a mentality and processing and technique standpoint, he just checks every single box. But he is, I would say, a below average to bad athlete. He's consistently getting tracked down from behind, even when he has a significant head start. You can see purely based on how many bullet points I have in the strengths and weaknesses, there's a lot more things that he does well than things he struggles with, but the lack of athletic traits does limit him, in my opinion. As a receiver, he has very reliable hands, just 1 drop on 32 targets over the last 2 years, 0 in 2024. But he wasn't used that much as a receiver, didn't run an advanced route tree, and I don't think he has the athletic traits to really develop that skill set. He's a solid pass blocker, definitely willing to put his body on the line, and had a few dominant finishes last year, but the lack of size does catch up to him at times. My RB13 is another very underrated player, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt out of Arizona. So he transferred from New Mexico to Arizona in 2024, but ended up having eligibility issues and only played in week 1, actually against his former team, New Mexico. So you got to go back to the 2023 tape with him, and it's unfortunate that he didn't have the opportunity to put out tape against better competition. But man, I think Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is one of the most dynamic and creative runners in this class. I'm absolutely shocked that he didn't get a combine invite. You know, every year the list of invites comes out, and then people put out their lists of like, these are the top 10 combine snubs. And I pretty much never think there's like any combine snubs, because even with the guys that get invited, like the bottom 15 to 20 guys on that list were kind of on the border anyways, you know? But the fact that Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt didn't get invited, and guys like, you know, some of the first few players that I talked about in this video did, it needs to be investigated. It makes no sense to me. So he has so much juice as both a linear and lateral athlete. He has breakaway speed, almost no delay hitting the jets and accelerating to his top speed, and his explosive straight line burst, but also his lateral agility pretty much gives him access to any rushing lane that, you know, opens up or even starts to open up regardless of where he's located on the field. He can swerve away from traffic with sharp lateral cuts. He's got fluid hips to evade multiple defenders in a phone booth. His foot quickness, fluidity, and top speed, I think, gives him so much upside in an outside zone scheme. And it's not perfect, but I thought there were flashes of incredible vision when he was running outside zone. There are some times that he would try to do a little bit too much, like take one extra cutback when he could just take the first one and then hit the open lane. But the creativity and the natural vision and just some of the stuff that he's able to process stacks up with all but a few players in this class. He's kind of slender with an upright build, but played a lot better through contact than I was expecting. He does a good job of subtly adjusting his trajectory to make sure that he's not taking all of the contact from a tackle. He turns a lot of square wrap-up tackles into arm tackles, but when somebody's able to get a clean shot on him, you do see the lack of size and kind of the upright stature. Across 5 years, he only has 45 career targets, but he is a naturally very talented receiver. He makes some difficult adjustments down the field. I think with higher volume, he could be a capable third down back. There are some freestyle tendencies that you got to reel in with him, but I think Krosky-Merritt has so much going for him and would definitely be targeting him if I run a lot of outside zone. I think there's somewhat of a tier jump here as we head into my top 12. And that's going to start with LeQuint Allen out of Syracuse. The first thing I saw with LeQuint Allen was his height and weight, and I was immediately skeptical. If you've been listening to this entire video, you know I don't like guys who are tall and slender. He's built like a receiver, just over 6 foot, 204 pounds, really long arms, 32.5 inches. In my opinion, you couldn't create a worse running back build in a lab. But when I got to his tape, I was really impressed and immediately saw why he got good enough feedback to declare as a true junior. Hasn't even turned 21 yet. I think LeQuint Allen has such a high floor because I know that he will be a third down ace. Not just he can be on the field on third downs, he's going to change what you can call in obvious passing situations as an offensive coordinator. In 2024, he had 529 receiving yards. He ran 74 routes from the slot, which is the most of any running back in the FBS. He can run slants, angle routes, and just shake linebackers. Like when you motion him out wide, if you're following him with a linebacker, you're just setting yourself up to get exposed. He has really good hands, just a 4.7% career drop rate. Also showed the ability to secure catches through contact and win some contested targets. And then he's an outstanding pass blocker, really physical, great technique, quick processing, just checks every single box that you want to see for a third down back. He's still somewhat developmental as an inside runner, but I think there's a lot to be excited about. Still developing his vision, but I appreciate that he at least tries to run between the tackles. There's a lot of times that he sees it, sets it up perfectly, and it's teach tape, especially considering his age. This is the kind of player that I'd be happy to work with, as a running back coach. He needs some development, but he at least understands the play design, what gap we're trying to hit, just doesn't always read it quickly enough. Compared to some of these guys that take, 75% of their runs off tackle, and you just feel like it's going to be an uphill battle to even convince him to play how he's going to have to play in the NFL. With LeQuint Allen, I think there's a lot to build on. Needs to be a bit more decisive, getting north and south. There's some times where he'll dance in the backfield a little bit too much and second guess himself, but he's really good at pressing zone runs and has the ability to make sharp cutbacks. For a player of his build, I would have expected him to be just incapable in terms of power and contact balance. And there are a lot of times that he gets stood up on 3rd and 1. I think that's definitely a weakness to his game. But he was one of the most productive goal line backs in college football. And when you get into the low red zone, it's like a switch turns. And there's a lot of times that he just drives his legs and wills his way into the end zone. So I think ideally he's part of a rotation and you've got somebody else that's your early down back. But on third downs, he is a weapon with an extremely high floor. At RB11, I've got Quinshon Judkins out of Ohio State. I hadn't really watched him a lot heading into this year, but I played a lot of NCAA 25 over the summer, and I was expecting him to be this dynamic, shifty, elusive running back that, could spin, juke defenders in the open field. And that's not his game at all. He is just a downhill, straight line power back. Doesn't have much of a breakaway gear. He's not really going to shake people in the open field. A lot of times he doesn't even try to make a move to evade them, but he will lower his shoulder, power through contact, just a devastating truck stick and stiff arm. To me, his vision is kind of average. I thought he was really good on power and counter, and actually showed some patience at the line of scrimmage within those rushing schemes. On zone runs, he just really doesn't have a feel for how to set up his blockers though, so I do think he's kind of a scheme-dependent back. And then going back and watching some of his 2023 tape, I thought he was a lot less patient in 2024. I wonder if part of that's because he was splitting carries, and it's he's getting 12 touches a game, so when he gets an opportunity, he's just got to go full speed ahead. I was just kind of disappointed with his precision and pacing and nuance of how to set up his blocks. I'm definitely a lot lower on Quinshon Judkins relative to consensus. I just don't see a lot of high-end upside with him. Really impressive performance at the combine, but to me that didn't show up on tape. I think he's definitely going to be a contributor and probably a fairly effective power back. I just don't know that I see him becoming one of the 20 best running backs in the NFL. My next two players are probably the two most boom-bust prospects on this list, and that's going to start with Bhayshul Tutun, who is my RB10. He is the definition of a home run threat, ran a 4.32 in the 40-yard dash with a 1.48 10-yard split, 40.5-inch vertical jump, 130 in the broad. His speed when he hits the open field is unrivaled in this class. He is not getting caught from behind. I comped him to Matt Breida. He's a great fit for an outside zone scheme. Does a good job pressing the line, accelerating into cutback lanes. He is undersized, only 5'9", 206, but kind of like a pass rusher, he can convert speed to power and actually does a solid job of falling forward through contact and picking up extra yards at the end of the run. Now, Bhayshul Tutun has some absolutely horrific fumbling issues. 9 fumbles over the last 2 seasons, just is not secure with the ball. I'm actually very forgiving with fumbles to a certain extent, but I mean, when it comes to the ratings, I felt pretty comfortable setting Tutun as the floor for the fumble rating. What has him a bit lower than the next guy I'm going to talk about, who's very similar in a lot of ways, is I think Tutun is a bit more of a one-trick pony. Like, I really see one role for him, and it's Kyle Shanahan, 3rd round pick. Put him in a wide zone scheme, let him rip off 70-yard touchdowns every week. That one thing that he can do, he does at a very high level, but I'm not sure there's too much that he's going to add outside of that. My 9th ranked running back is Jaydon Blue out of Texas. And there's a part of me that wanted to grade him so much higher than I have him. He's my 100th player overall. When I'm grading players like Jaydon Blue or Savion Williams, the TCU receiver, I need someone to sit by me with a cat spray bottle and just keep me from giving them irresponsibly high grades. And, Blue and Bashal Tutin are the guys where I'm so excited about their potential. But if I'm heading into the draft and I'm a part of a front office, we've had our meetings all off season and agreed the one thing we have to do is come away with a starting running back, I would be terrified about banking on these guys to hit their upside. Not that I'm doubting them necessarily, it's just really easy to envision them getting cut in 2 years, So Blue is an undersized back with breakaway speed, only 215 career attempts, but with his big play potential, you see why he declared early. Blazing speed, absolute home run threat anytime he touches the ball. He can do a lot of the same stuff as Tutin on outside zone and just burn open grass. What actually gets me more excited about Jaydon Blue, though, is his change of direction ability and what he can do as a receiver. He glides downfield and stacks defenders automatically on wheel routes. He can track the ball over his shoulder. He's the kind of player where you just can't match him with a linebacker in man coverage, but then he annihilates people on angle routes. He has so many big plays on wheel routes, so he's coming out of the backfield, linebacker squares up with him. Blue gives a hard jab step to the outside. That linebacker has to respect his vertical speed and turn his hips. And then once he opens up, he just crosses his face and it's easy separation. They have no chance of mirroring him. You see that same skill set show up in the flat. He is so slippery out in open space with the dead legs, stutter, juke. It's the same situation where the threat of his speed just paralyzes defenders when they break down to tackle him in open space. But there are a lot of red flags here, so only 215 career rushing attempts, which is good in the sense that he doesn't have a lot of mileage, but bad in the sense that he doesn't have a lot of experience. Within those 215 attempts, a big handful of them are sweeps, tosses, wide stretch runs where he isn't really being asked to read blocks the way you have to for most concepts. It's basically just Sark spent the week drawing up a play to get his fastest player the ball in space, and he just has to sprint downfield. So he doesn't have a lot of experience working traditional between the tackles concepts, and the results when he did have to do that were not great. He doesn't really break tackles or generate yards through initial contact. At his size, I don't know that there's a lot of upside for him to improve very much in that area. And then he also has 7 fumbles on very few carries, so equally as concerning as Bashal Tutin. At RB8, I've got Cam Skattebo out of Arizona State, the best power back in this class, but he's more than just a power back. A lot of people who haven't really studied him see the slow white running back that trucks people and assume a lot of things about Cam Skattebo that just aren't true. So he is slow, he gets caught from behind a lot, and I knew that he was slow heading into his tape, but I was pleasantly surprised by a lot of the other aspects of his athletic profile. Within the first couple drives of watching him, he beat like a safety's pursuit angle and won the corner. And I was like, wow, look at you. That was an impressive play. And then you get a few games into his tape and it's just routine. He consistently wins pursuit angles to the edge. And it didn't surprise me at all that he had a 39.5-inch vertical. For as slow as he is incredibly explosive. He's also surprisingly elusive in the open field. He can also separate from linebackers on angle routes and then has extremely reliable hands. So in terms of his athleticism, it's really just speed that's the limitation. I don't think it's fair to say that he's a bad athlete overall. But really what he does bring to the table is just being such a punishing runner, the elite power, contact balance, trucking ability. He has some incredible runs where he falls on his hands and recaptures balance and then heads to the end zone. But sometimes with power backs, it's their only way of engaging with a tackle is to try to run through it. That's something I would say about Quinshon Judkins, for example. And that's definitely Cam Skatteboo's preferred method, but he has surprising elusiveness, surprisingly just well-rounded running back. Also does the little things right, good patience and vision within, I think, every blocking scheme. My negatives with Skatteboo, he's got 822 career touches, and you might as well apply like a 1.5x multiplier to those because he makes no effort to protect himself from hits. Like every run, he's trying to see how much contact he can take. So there's a lot of mileage that's racked up over the years. 10 fumbles over the last 3 seasons. He is pretty loose with the football. And then watching his pass pro is a wild ride. He has a few dominant finishes, but overall he is just so sloppy with his technique and the results are pretty bad. So my comparison for Skatteboo in terms of play style would be James Conner if he was a bad pass blocker, or a slower Michael Turner. My 7th ranked running back is Trevor Etienne out of Georgia. I was very surprised at how much I loved his tape. I had a completely uninformed, preconceived opinion that I received passively from Florida fans talking shit on Twitter that he was like some scrub. And I finished his tape and I'm like, Trevor Etienne has an argument to be a top 5 running back in this class. He's the most elusive running back in this class. I have him with the highest rating for open field elusiveness, the highest rating for change of direction, and the 2nd highest rating for avoiding backfield traffic. He's just completely unfazed by defenders right in his face when he takes the handoff, avoids tackles in the open field, avoids tackles in the backfield. Very difficult running back to touch. He has good speed and burst. He wins the corner pretty consistently. He's undersized and his contact balance is below average, but outside of that, he's a great athlete. And when it comes to moving the pile, he actually has some good physicality and leg drive to pick up yards after he gets wrapped up. He has very good vision, a nice blend of patience and decisiveness. He has reliable hands, just 1 drop on 63 career targets. He can run a decently diverse route tree. And then even though his anchor and sustained strength aren't great in pass pro, his processing skills are maybe second to none in this class. For his negatives, this is not a 3-down running back. I don't think he has the size. He has never really done that at the college level, never led his team in rushing attempts. I mentioned the contact balance. I also think that, for Trevor Etienne, I actually watched both years of his tape, and I thought his 2023 tape was electric, and 2024 was just really good. And then you're not going to believe this, but another Georgia player that has a DUI or a reckless driving charge. My RB6 is Dylan Sampson, another player that I was not expecting to like as much as I did. So he has a lot of the negatives or concerns on his profile that most Tennessee running backs have. 27.8% of his rushing yards in 2024 came against 5 or less man boxes, 2nd highest rate in this class. But the most impressive stuff on his tape is actually him navigating crowded rushing lanes and running between the tackles. I think if you're somebody who isn't sold on Dylan Sampson, and this is the game that sold me on him, I would watch his tape against Oklahoma. So in that game, Tennessee had, I'm pretty sure it was both of their starting tackles went out with injury like early 3rd quarter, and they tried to pass a couple times, but the pass rush was just overwhelming, didn't have any time to drop back. So they essentially fully committed to the running game. And I don't know exactly how many times it was, but it felt like they just ran it like 25 straight times to end the game. And so that's actually the rare opportunity that you got to see a Tennessee running back run against a stacked box, because Oklahoma knew they were running it, so they just, sent an extra safety into the box. And that's where you really see Dylan Sampson's vision, his spatial awareness, and just how comfortable he is working through traffic. He's an explosive athlete with home run speed. Pretty sure he was a track star in high school, so he's got that big playability, but this is not somebody that's ideally going to have like 3 carries for 70 yards. He can rack up 4, 5, 6 yard gains. I think it's between Sampson and Brashard Smith for the best spin move in this class. He also has quick feet to make rapid cuts. Another player that's undersized but has really good contact balance and physicality as a runner. I know there's a lot of split opinions on Dylan Sampson. I started out a lot lower on him. I would make sure, if you are lower on him, make sure that you've watched the Oklahoma and the Georgia game. That's where I think you really see like what he can be at the next level. And then kind of rounding out this tier of mid to late third round running backs, I've got Dameon Pierce out of Miami at RB5. He has an NFL ready build, 5'11 and a half, 217. But he's actually listed at 232. So I think that's another case where he dropped weight to try to run a better 40 time. Ended up running a 4.51, which is solid. I didn't think his breakaway speed was anything special. Damian Martinez had an absolutely insane end to the season. I thought weeks 1 to 6 was kind of average. Weeks 8 through the bowl game, he was completely unstoppable. And that stretch of tape, in my opinion, stacks up, or I would say not even stacks up, is better than anyone's in this class outside of Ashton Jeanty, and you could even argue between those two. I'm going to give you 4 stats to sell you on Damian Martinez. So he ranked second to Ashton Jeanty in yards after contact per attempt in 2024, 4.46. He had a 93.8% success rate on third and fourth and short, which was the highest in the FBS. He had the highest success rate in this class on runs where he was contacted behind the line of scrimmage, 30%. So 30% of the time that a defender touched him behind the line of scrimmage, he still turned that into a positive play for the offense. And then 79.4% of his yards in 2024 came on runs between the tackles, which was the highest rate in the FBS. He's incredibly powerful, elite contact balance, finishes runs consistently. When it comes to just straight line downhill power, he has everything that you look for. But then his lateral movement skills to make a sharp cut and even stack multiple cuts together without losing scheme is kind of hard to fathom for a running back of his size. On gap scheme runs especially, he has really good vision between the tackles, patient reading the defensive flow, setting up rushing lanes. He really just has linebackers on a string, running them into blocks. I have one of the weaknesses that he doesn't have much experience running wide zone, which is true based on his 2024 tape. I saw somebody on Twitter actually make the point that he ran a lot of outside zone in 2023 at Oregon State. So I haven't done that yet, but I need to go back to that tape and see how he looks like running wide zone. I think he's probably just an early down back because he doesn't have very natural hands, 12.9% drop rate over the last 2 seasons. And his receiving role was pretty much just check downs and swing passes. But I think he has a chance to be a dominant early down back. All right, there is a tier jump when we get to the next 3 players. And they're all really good prospects, but I think they're a bit specialized, each kind of for different schemes and roles. So RB4 is going to be Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. This is the guy I'm targeting if I run a lot of outside zone. His vision, patience, and footwork is just everything you look for a zone runner. Caleb Johnson's tape is just run after run of him making the correct decision on outside zone. He has great size, 6'1", 224 pounds, only ran a 4.57, but his top speed is more than good enough for the NFL. And if you look at his next gen stats tracking data, that's a lot more in line with his play speed. He was above 50th percentile in terms of top speed for all of the running back drills. Now, he is a really slow starter, so the 10-yard split, 26th percentile, that does line up with what he looks like on tape. He's also pretty stiff, not really somebody that's going to shake defenders in the open field. I think elusiveness is definitely lacking, and I'm not sure about his ability to execute runs other than outside zone. When I try to project him to a more gap-heavy scheme, which I don't think he'll get drafted to anyways, there's a touchdown run against Minnesota that really sticks out as just a teach tape rep about how to set up your blocks, get skinny through the hole on, it was power counter or something like that, but just so little experience with those concepts. And then he also wasn't used a lot in the passing game, which makes sense because Iowa doesn't really pass. His hands looked fine early in the season, but had a couple drops midway through the year. And I think he's an average pass blocker. He has the size for it, but Pretty tentative, engaging with his assignment, doesn't really like forcefully strike or use his size to his advantage. So he's a scheme dependent player, but the one thing that he brings to the table, he does at an elite level. My third ranked running back is TreVeyon Henderson, and this is more of the third down speed back. A lot of people have started to talk about like the Jahmyr Gibbs role, which I'm not exactly sure what that means, but if we're saying the Jahmyr Gibbs role is like you're a complimentary back who maybe doesn't lead the team in carries, but you're actually the most skilled and explosive running back on the roster, I guess that makes sense with TreVeyon Henderson. I don't think he's a very natural between the tackles runner. Doesn't have the size to power through tackles. I think from a durability standpoint, it's kind of been proven that he's at his best when he's part of a rotation. So I'm not drafting TreVeyon Henderson to take 20 carries a game and like be my lead early down back. But I think he has a chance to be the best third down back in the league with just game-breaking explosiveness and speed, but then can also do the little things that you want from a third down back as far as pass pro, catching the football. I have him rated as the best pass blocker in this class, which for a 5'10", 202-pound running back, like your tape's got to be pretty spectacular for me to give you that title. I thought over the first half of the season, his pass pro tape was as good as I've seen for a college running back. There were a few more bad reps later in the year, but overall just absolutely tenacious, so much physicality. He's looking to end people whenever he's in blitz pickup. He has good hands. There's actually a typo on my scouting report. He had one drop in 2024 that was in the playoffs after I had written the report. But don't worry about him catching the football. He can run, I think, an expanded route tree compared to what he ran at Ohio State. He ran a nasty sluggo against Purdue down the right sideline. So I think as a big play, complimentary third down back, TreVeyon Henderson is good enough in that role to be worth a second round pick. My RB2 is Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina. And I've started to see some more people either have Omarion Hampton as RB1 or say like the gap between him and Jeanty is a lot smaller than you think or whatever. I think I would still say that the gap between Hampton and Jeanty is bigger than the gap between Hampton and the next highest guy, TreVeyon Henderson. I think Hampton's a great prospect, but there are a couple things that have him firmly with a lower grade than Jeanty, and I'll just start off with those. I think that he is purely a linear downhill runner, and his elusiveness and change of direction are closer to average. And then his vision specifically on zone runs was kind of disappointing to me. He has a hard time finding cutback lanes on outside zone. They don't run a ton of outside zone at North Carolina, but when they do, pretty much everything hits front side. So those are kind of the two knocks that have him with a lower grade than Jeanty. But outside of that, he does so many things at a high level, and he is a really, really good running back prospect. Sturdy build, 5'11 and a half, 221, outstanding contact balance to ricochet off of defenders, stay on his feet. He's completely unfazed by angle tackles. If you aren't squared up with him, you don't really stand a chance at bringing him down. He does a great job on duo and inside zone of setting up linebackers to get hung up in the traffic and then bouncing them outside. He led FBS running backs over the last 2 years with 1,497 yards on duo and inside zone. He only had one fumble and one drop in 2024, so very reliable holding onto the football. And then I loved Hampton's pass pro tape. I think he's one of the best pass blockers in this class. He might not be the most dynamic pass catcher, and you might end up bringing in someone else to specialize in that role just to save him from hits, but he's somebody that can be on the field for all three downs, absolutely. And my top ranked running back is Ashton Jeanty, who just has so many strengths and so few weaknesses. So obviously his production in 2024 was historic. It would be faster to list the categories that he didn't lead college football in than talk about where he ranked first. Everybody talks about his contact balance for good reason. I mean, contact balance is elite. He just requires gang tackles to bring him down. Does a great job of either fully extending with a stiff arm or just kind of subtly using his offhand to discard tacklers from the side. So I have him rated with the best contact balance in this class, a 97. But to me, the thing that I love the most about Ashton Jeanty as a prospect is his vision and processing. I think that he probably has the best vision of any running back that I've watched. There are just so few plays on tape where he misses a read or makes an incorrect decision. He's an elite zone runner. He can execute power and counter. He's creative enough to retrack across the field and salvage a poorly blocked run, but he rarely bites off more than he can chew and makes a bad decision that results in a negative play. As an athlete, I think he's a step below Bijan Robinson. I mean, he rarely gets caught from behind. I don't know that he has elite speed, but I'd say it's like 80th percentile. He's definitely a bit more stiff than Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs, but not somebody that I would say has athletic limitations by any means. Really, the only negative I could come up with as a runner is that he has 9 fumbles over the last 2 seasons, which just as a raw total looks a lot worse than it actually is because he has so many carries. So that's nothing compared to Bashal Tutin and Jaden Blue, for example. And then he can also be on the field on third downs. He's a really good pass blocker. Wasn't used nearly as much in the passing game in 2024, but he led the FBS in receiving yards among running backs in 2023, so you know he can do it. This is another one where I wrote the scouting reports like before the playoffs, so it says he only has 1 drop in 2024, but he actually had 3. I need to update that. Overall though, 4.7% career drop rate, very good. There are running backs in this class that ran a more diverse route tree, like Brashard Smith, LaQuint Allen, the guys that are like half running back, half receiver. But other than that, I mean, Ashton Jeanty was one of the easiest players in this class to write the weaknesses for, because there's just not a whole lot that he doesn't do at a high level. So that's going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and leave a comment to help the algorithm. Greatly appreciate that. If you aren't already, make sure to follow me on Twitter, and you can check out my full draft board, which will be linked in the description.